Ever wonder what a ransom really means?
Yeah, like beyond just the movies.
Yeah, like in a deeper sense.
Like, what are we really getting at with that word?
Exactly. Today, we're going to kind of dive deep into this idea,
Mm.
and we're going to look specifically at 1 Timothy 2.6.
Oh, okay.
It's a really interesting verse
It is.
because it talks about how Jesus gave himself as a ransom for all people.
Mm.
So I guess, uh, first off, for people who don't know,
Yeah.
could you set the scene a little bit?
Sure. So this verse is part of a letter written by the Apostle Paul
Right.
to a young leader in the early church named Timothy.
Gotcha.
And in this letter, Paul is talking about how the gospel is meant for everybody.
Okay.
And God really desires that everyone experience salvation.
So he's talking to Timothy,
Right.
who is in the church at Ephesus,
Yeah, Ephesus.
and kind of explaining like, hey, this is the deal.
Like, this is the good news.
This is the good news.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's actually get into this verse.
Okay.
1 Timothy 2.6. What jumps out to me first is that it says Jesus gave himself.
Hmm.
It wasn't something that was forced on him.
Right.
He chose to do this.
This was a voluntary act.
Right, a voluntary act.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think one thing that's really cool is that this is actually echoed in the Gospel of John.
Okay.
Jesus says at one point, "No one takes my life from me, but I lay it down on my own accord."
Wow.
And I think that's so powerful because it really highlights the agency and intention behind Jesus' sacrifice.
It wasn't something that just happened to him.
Yeah, it wasn't something that just happened.
He was in control.
He was choosing to give himself up.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, like this idea of a ransom that wasn't something new
Right.
that comes from the Old Testament.
Totally. Like you go back to Isaiah chapter 53, it describes this suffering servant who is going to bear the sins of many.
Right.
It says he poured out his life unto death and was numbered with the transgressors. So centuries before Jesus came on the scene, you see this idea of a ransom being foreshadowed.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's almost like a, well, I was going to say, I think about when I hear ransom,
Yeah.
I think about pirates,
Right. Classic pirates.
Someone's been kidnapped,
Yeah.
they're being held hostage,
Mhm.
and the pirates are demanding gold
Bags of gold.
for their release.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that that idea that comes to mind is really just a starting point.
It's like a little picture of what's really going on.
Right.
It's not just about physical captivity. It's about being redeemed from something much deeper.
So what is it that we're really held captive by?
Well, it's the grip of sin. It's the fear of death. It's that separation from God that comes with all of that.
That makes me think of like
Yeah.
when I feel stuck in my own bad habits or, those patterns of behavior that I can't seem to break.
Right.
Is it a type of captivity?
I think it absolutely can be.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we're talking about anything that is holding us back from experiencing true life.
Okay.
And that can take so many different forms.
Right. Like you were saying, it could be
It could be addiction,
fear.
guilt,
Yeah.
anything that keeps us from really living freely.
And this freedom,
Yeah.
this redemption is offered to everyone
Yes.
because the verse is very clear. It says, for all people.
That's a huge statement.
It is a huge statement.
Yeah, and actually that's where some scholars get a little tripped up
Yeah.
because they see a tension between the idea that the offer of salvation is universal,
Right.
but the reality is that not everybody chooses to accept it.
Yeah.
But, Paul is very clear even earlier in 1 Timothy that God desires all people to be saved.
So it really makes you think,
It does.
if this ransom has been paid for everyone,
Right.
what does that mean for how we see ourselves, how we treat others?
Yeah, like if everyone is worthy of that sacrifice,
Right.
how does that change our interactions?
It's almost like a challenge
It is a challenge.
to live in a way that reflects that,
Right.
that idea of a universal ransom,
It's a call to action.
a love that extends to everyone.
Everyone. Yeah.
So just to kind of sum up what we've talked about, we looked at the depth of Christ's sacrifice.
Yeah.
And we talked about this meaning of ransom
Right.
as redemption from sin and death.
And that separation from God,
Right.
which is a huge deal.
It is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And then we talked about how this offer is for everyone.
Right. For everyone.
So it's a lot to take in,
It is.
but it's really powerful.
It's really powerful.
And I think if we really want to take this deeper,
Yeah.
we have to ask ourselves, if Christ's sacrifice was for everyone,
Everyone.
what is our responsibility?
Oh, that's good.
How can we live that out?
Right. How can we embody that message?
That message of universal love and redemption.
That's a big question.
Yeah, it is a big question.
Definitely worth thinking about.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, this was fun.
I hope it's giving you some things to think about.
I hope so.
Maybe some new insights into what this idea of ransom really means.
Yeah, and how we can live it out.
Thanks again for listening.
See ya.